perspectives and concerns through respectful and open dialogue. Tonight, you will hear important safety tips from law enforcement officers to keep both parties safe and ways to improve relationships within the community.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. Again, the gentleman that you just heard from will be our moderator for tonight. He is Kendrick Mays. He is a 2012 graduate of Catawba College. He holds a master's degree from North Carolina Central University in Recreation Administration. Kendrick is currently employed with the City of Greensboro. He is the Special Events Coordinator. He, outside of all of the things that he does in Greensboro, he is actively involved in the Catawba College Alumni Board. He is also an active member of the Catawba Black Alumni Network. He is a former member of the 2007 South Atlantic Conference football team. He was the recipient of the 2019 Catawba College Young Alumni Award for Career Development. Again, Kendrick, we want to say thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us this evening. Thank you for your support to Catawba College, and I will turn it back over to you.
All right, definitely. Thank you for the opportunity. All right, so we will start with brief introductions. So we'll start with Sergeant Henry Doherty Jr. If you go ahead and give a wave so people know where you are on the screen.
Sir, I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Yeah, I'm here in Charlotte, and I've been in law enforcement now for 27 years. So I'm set to retire in about 3 more months. So
yes, sir.
I said 27 years in law enforcement, also veteran, a Marine Corps veteran, and just glad to be here.
Oh yeah, I apologize. So what I'm going to do, I just need you to throw your hand. I'm getting ready to tell the people all that you have done.
No, I haven't done a whole lot. No.
All right. So who just introduced himself, that's Sergeant Henry Doherty Jr. with the North Carolina Highway. He's a North Carolina Highway Patrol officer in the District 1. He has served as deputy in Iredell County Sheriff's Office. He's also served as a high school resource officer and road deputy. As he mentioned, he's set to retire here soon. His education is from Mitchell Community College. All right, so thank you again. He's also a general and specialized instructor through the state of North Carolina. All right, next we are moving to Sergeant Arnesha B. Littlejohn. All right. All right, so Sergeant Littlejohn, NC Highway Patrol Troop H, District 5. She has been with the Highway Patrol for 5 years. She is also a staff sergeant in the Air Force and has been serving for almost 10 years. She attended North Carolina A&T and finished at Liberty University with a bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary studies with a focus in healthcare administration and criminal justice. All right. Mr. Trevor Allen, if you'll throw your hand up, all right. Mr. Allen is a Catawba College graduate, class of 1992. He currently serves as the Director of Justice for the North Carolina Justice Academy. While at Catawba, he received a Bachelor of Arts, Political Science and Sociology. He went on to receive a Master of Justice Administration from Methodist University. He has served with the Salisbury Police Department, as well as a law enforcement trainer, as well as the Deputy Director for the North Carolina Criminal Justice Standards Division. He's currently the Director of the Justice Academy. He is married to Miss Sarah Allen, who is a Catawba College graduate, class of 2004. They have twin sons, and he is an avid cyclist and Hurricanes fan.
Go Canes.
Yeah, all right. All right, so we have been on Zoom and virtual meetings for a while with the pandemic, so you already know the rules. If you would, just keep your mics muted. You can post comments in the chat box, clap, you can raise your hand. Staff at Catawba will be monitoring the chat box. All right, just want to, as we mentioned earlier, this is open dialogue, so we just want to most definitely be respectful of others. I don't think anyone took time out of their schedule tonight to come on here and disrespect people. So we are going to have a great session tonight. All right, we are going to start with Sergeant Henry Doherty Jr., with the North Carolina Highway Patrol. All right, Sergeant Doherty, you ready? All right, here we go. For participants listening and joining in this forum, could you describe to us the protocol when pulling a car over during a traffic stop?
Okay, this is my advice to any person, young man or woman, when you're pulled over, okay? We advise you when you pull over, at least pull to a safe location so that neither us or you get hit from the beginning. Safe location. When we approach the vehicle, we like to see hands. We tell people all the time, you know, we're not being very disrespectful. This is how we train. We do train that when we approach the vehicle, we do with caution. So some people sometimes take that as a sign of aggression, but that's just how we're trained to do. But my protocol, what we do when we stop a vehicle, we ask you that you keep your hands in plain sight, that we can see until we can establish otherwise. At this point, we'll ask you a series of questions. And at this point, we may ask you to reduce your driver's license or whatever any form of type of ID you may have. And we ask you to stay inside the vehicle. When you're stopped, don't jump out the vehicle. If you would, stay inside the vehicle, seated until we approach you, and then we will go from there. Once we continue our conversation, we establish whatever. We'll ask you why we stopped you, whatever. We may tell you to keep your hands in plain sight where we can see them, and whatever. And that's basically the protocol. Pretty much it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So let me see your hand. So just a follow-up question to that. Is it wise that as soon as we're pulled over to already have our ID and registration, that way we don't have to reach for it, we can automatically hand that to you?
Yes, sir. I mean, that's a good idea. And most people, if we pull you over, you probably know you're going to have to produce some type of identification. So we can identify who you are. So that's a smart thing to do. Go ahead and have your ID ready, wherever it may be. The thing that scares me the most is when I'm approaching a vehicle and people are digging all under the seats and doing all. They may not see it as a threat, but I do, because I don't know what's inside the vehicle or what that person's intent is. So when you start digging around in the vehicle, especially at nighttime when our visibility is limited, and you're digging under the seat and making all types of movement, at this point, it tends to put me on edge. So yeah, that's a good point. Go ahead and have everything ready when we approach. That way, when I get there, everything's already ready and you don't have to be digging around inside your vehicle.
Yes, sir. And before we move on to
Can I make a comment on that, please?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I would say I don't think it's wise at all to start digging through and trying to get your license, registration, because for me, that is unsafe. Because as you said, officer, if you see me digging around in my glove box under the seat, that might make you nervous. And as somebody who has had a lot of not good experiences with officers, there is no way that you're going to catch me messing around trying to find something. Immediately, when you pull me over, my hands are going to be on the steering wheel until told otherwise. I mean, for me, when you ask for license and registration, I'm going to say, sir, my license is in my pocket, my registration is in my glove box. Do I have permission to reach and get them? Because I don't want to give no officer a reason to think that I'm reaching for a weapon.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Mr. Washington. And that was going to be my question for you, Sergeant Doherty.
Yes, sir.
Say someone hasn't produced their identification as soon as you approach the vehicle. What's the tips, or how should they say my ID is in my glove box, or I believe it's in my back seat, or it's not in my back pocket? How should they inform you before they start to retrieve it?
Well, basically, like he just said, if I approach the vehicle and your hands are 10 and 2, and I'll ask you for your license, registration, and I'll ask you where is it at? Where is it located? It's in the glove box. And he made a good point. Okay, say, may I reach for it? Absolutely. So I'll ask you, if you don't have it with you, I'll say, well, where's it located at? They may say it's in my back seat in my pocketbook. Okay, what's in my back pocket, can I reach for it? Or it's in the glove box. So he made a very good point, and that's the way it should be done.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
All right. What causes law enforcement to pull a car over?
Any violation. As a state trooper, we enforce all traffic laws to the state of North Carolina. So you could be pulled for anything from speeding, not wearing a seat belt, an expired tag registration, any type of unsafe movement. Basically, any traffic violation is what we enforce, so you can be pulled over for any of those violations. Yep, sorry, she wants to ask.
We don't always stop for a violation. I mean, we've stopped cleaning cars at night just because the headlights weren't on, just to say, hey, you still got your daytime lights on, or turn your lights on, or something like that. And then that could turn into something, but we don't always stop for that. Sometimes we stop to genuinely just help people. Right. So it could be anything, honestly.
Can I ask another question, please?
Mm-hmm.
This has been 20 years ago, but I had an officer stop me. And when he pulled me over, he said, I pulled you over because I'm stopping every first, fourth, and eighth car that I see. Now, I will also tell you, when I got pulled over that time, I was coming home from track practice. It was 6 o'clock on like a Wednesday afternoon. And next thing I know, 6 cops rolled on me with the K9 patrol and a detective. But he told me his reasoning for stopping me was first, fourth, and eighth car that he saw. So I happened to fit that number. Does that sound like something that an officer typically does?
No.
No, sir. That is not how we operate. That's not how we operate. No, sir. We just don't randomly pick cars to stop because this is the 8th car or this is a red car and like that. It usually has to be a traffic violation for the reason that we stop you.
Okay. I mean, it's been 20 years ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday.
So let me just jump in here for a moment. It's Rashika, everyone. This is a great dialogue and conversation. We have a small amount of time to get through our entire agenda. So if anyone has any questions or comments, we have to hold them to the end or put them in the chat box, and we will try to do our very best to get to everybody's questions and comments and so forth. So thank you, guys. I'll turn it back over to you, Kendrick.
Thank you. All right, and now we are moving to Sergeant Littlejohn with the NC Highway Patrol Troop H. Here we go. Share with us some safety measures or tips if someone is pulled over.
Safety measures for the driver or?
Yes. Well, let's do both. Yes. We'll start with the driver.
Well, depending on where you are, so in Charlotte, it's predominantly interstates like highways. The right shoulder is usually the safest. It's the widest. So if you could pull to the right, that would give you a little room as well as the officer that's stopping you. If you could pull to a lit area that keeps you and myself safe. They're doing a lot of construction here in Charlotte, so there's a lot of barrier walls where you can't pull to the shoulder. So something as simple as turning on your flashers to acknowledge, so that way we know you're acknowledging me behind you with my blue lights. You're not trying to run from me. You're just trying to find a safe place to pull. So maybe turn on your flashers. Once you stop, if you'll go ahead and roll your window down, turn on the interior light so that way we can see. That helps keep us both safe as well. Turn your radio down. I personally don't like cigarette smoke, and I think it's just a respectful thing to not blow smoke in anybody's face. So just little, it's basic common courtesy things that help keep us all safe.
So thank you for sharing that. All right. What are the unknowns in a police officer's mind when conducting a traffic stop?
Going back to what Sergeant Doherty said about seeing hands, we have a saying, hands kill. If I cannot see what's in your hand, it takes a split second for you to pull a gun, to pull anything, to grab me, whatever it is. So we don't know what's on your mind or what you're going through or what you've done prior to us stopping you. So you always keep in the back of your mind that something could happen, but you don't want to work with that fear, if that makes sense. You know, you want to go and do your job, but you also have to be prepared that in the event that something happens, what am I going to do? So those are things that a person speeding, why are they speeding? Or, you know, why are they so nervous, or just anything. Those are all things that kind of run through our mind. Also, I'm on the side of the road and I could get hit.
Right.
You know, it's dark outside. People don't respect blue light, so they don't necessarily move over. You know, it's a combination of perceived threats, potential threats. The longer I have you stop, the higher the level of threat it is for myself and for the person I'm stopping.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing. All right, Mr. Allen. Mr. Allen, Director of Justice for the North Carolina Justice Academy. Here we go. Describe to us the training of law enforcement once they enter the academy.
Happy to, Kendrick. But first, just to point out, it is homecoming, although virtual. I still have my Catawba hat on.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You got to represent, right? So
That's right.
I figured it's about the only business-related meeting I'm going to get through wearing a ball cap. So I appreciate you extending me that ability to do that. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks to all of you for being here to engage in this conversation. It's critical that we have open conversation and dialogue about issues like these. And I get involved in a lot of these in my position at different levels. So it's not only important to me, but it's an honor to come back and do it with the Catawba group. So thanks for letting me do this. You asked about training. So let me just hit a few different levels of training that are required for law enforcement in the state of North Carolina. And first is basic law enforcement training, or BLET. If you hear me say that, there's tons of acronyms in our world. So if you hear me say it, just know that that one's basic law enforcement training. And that's what you might consider academy training, required of every officer before they can even become sworn and get hired with an agency. That is 640 hours of training, and it's done across 36 separate topic blocks of instruction. So it's the ones you probably would think of: driving, firearms training, physical fitness training, what we call subject control or use of force techniques. But it's also many other topics like crime prevention, domestic violence, anti-terrorism, and human trafficking, constitutional law, juvenile law. Like I said, there's 36 of those topics, and they vary in length for a total of 640 hours. That program is delivered primarily through the community college system in North Carolina. There are about 65 delivery sites in North Carolina, the majority of those being community colleges, but then some of our larger agencies deliver that program in-house. So the State Highway Patrol is one of them, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, Raleigh PD, and then some of the other bigger counties as well. Wake County delivers their own in-house. And they can add on to that. I don't want to take the troopers here on the call back to their academy experience, because I know they're proud of it, but I know they probably don't want to repeat it. But these delivery sites can add to those 640 hours. So that's the state minimum. Many add more training to their BLET programs, agency-specific things. So at the Highway Patrol, they're going to do more traffic-related training than other delivery sites would. Some do more physical fitness, some do more investigations training, whatever it may be that's specific to their agency too. So that's what's required at the basic level for every officer. Every year also, both the North Carolina has two commissions. They have a Criminal Justice Education and Training Standards Commission. That's a mouthful, I know. And then there's the Sheriff's Commission as well. So the Criminal Justice Commission oversees all municipal and state law enforcement, corrections personnel, juvenile justice, and probation and parole officers. The Sheriff's Commission oversees, like you can imagine, deputy sheriffs, telecommunicators, and detention officers that work in jails. Both of those commissions mandate 24 hours of training every year for all sworn law enforcement, as well as the detention and telecommunicators as well. Those topics vary by year. There are some that are the same every year, firearms being one of them, because it's such a high liability topic. So you have to qualify with a firearm and go through the agency use of force policy every year. You have to do legal update training, because whether it's case law or statutory law changes throughout the year. Every year the legislature will institute new laws. You'll see some case law that will come out that may change something. So there's a legal update every year that officers have to take. And then also one topic called juvenile minority sensitivity training. And that's a topic mandated by the legislature. Been doing it for, I think, 15 years or so, or better, whenever the mandated in-service program became mandatory. And that topic will vary widely every year. And when we come back to me later, I can probably give you a list of these topics that have been done over the years. But those are the mandated ones. And then the rest, so that's about 12 to 14 hours of those 24 hours every year. The rest can be made up of whatever topics come before the commissions. So that varies as well. It could be domestic violence training, again, beyond the basic level, could be an advanced domestic violence topic. We've done topics like de-escalation, equality and policing, human trafficking, decision-making skills. They vary year by year by year that make up those other hours. Now, and agencies can go well beyond that too, and many do, beyond that 24-hour minimum every year. For instance, Burlington Police Department does de-escalation training monthly, I believe. They just got recognized nationally for their efforts in de-escalation training. At the Highway Patrol, I'm sure they could jump in and talk about what extra is required of them. They're one of the agencies in the state that does additional physical fitness training and testing every year, where it's not required anywhere else in the state. Past the academy level, you don't have to do any physical fitness training as a mandate. So those are the basic level and the in-service level. And one thing about me, I'll go on all night. So you just have to kind of stop me if you have a question or to clarify anything, or I'll probably keep going till 9 and not know it.
All right. Well, I'm just filling up my notepad with my Catawba pen. But we're going to save. So I got some notes, got some questions. We're going to save some of those for the end. But I do want to get to the second question for you. But thank you for sharing those details.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What are the trends in the state and nationwide concerning formally incorporating diversity and multicultural trainings?
So intuitive and a great question. I appreciate you asking it because it's apropos to some of the things we're doing in North Carolina. And it's important that this group, and I tell every group I present to know that North Carolina is on it when it comes to these things. We've been working on a number of these, I'll call them critical or emerging issues, for a while. And they're already been incorporated into some of our training that's being planned and researched and developed currently. So if I could hit on back to the academy level training to start. Every 10 years or so, the Criminal Justice Commission mandates a job task analysis be conducted for entry-level law enforcement officers in the state. That was recently completed about this time, December of last year. That was completed through a survey of all agencies across the state. The data from that got turned over to us at the Justice Academy. So we develop all the training in support of both commissions. So that came to us. We began revising all of that 640-hour curriculum. We started doing that in January, February this year. And we will continue doing that throughout this time next year. So our timeline is to finish the R&D and the development of that curriculum by December of next year, and then begin piloting in early 2022. So I say all that as just as background to get to your question, to answer it, is the emerging issues, some of the things that are trends you asked about. In the current version of BLET training, there are not specific blocks on things like bias, 21st century policing practices like procedural justice and police legitimacy. Those things did not specifically exist in the current BLET. We've already been, for like I said, most all this year, revising that program and adding those things into it. So incorporating those things. Also, emotional intelligence, decision-making skills, critical thinking skills, that type of philosophy is being written into the basic law enforcement program from the very first topic. We consider it foundational content that will be woven into every other topic thereafter. So when you get down the line and you're doing things like traffic stops, like Trooper Doherty was mentioning earlier, when we get to that block later on in the curriculum, we will then bring back in. Now, remember, here were the topics about procedural justice, because if what we do as an agency and as an industry isn't just in our procedure, that's where we have problems, whether it be community relations, safety, any of the other things stem from that. So we're weaving that foundational content in from the start. So those are the big trends that are going. Other things like looking at use of force. You saw the task force for racial equity, governor's task force, made a recommendation that all agencies in North Carolina should ban chokeholds. Now at the academy, we haven't taught that for as long as I've been an officer in the state. We haven't specifically taught those type of techniques anyway, but those are some of the trends you're seeing as well, both nationally and in the state.
Awesome, thank you. Yep, and okay, before we move on, just for clarification, R&D, unless I missed that definition, what does R&D?
Oh, R&D meaning research and development.
Okay.
So all of our curriculum, our lesson plans, we have in-house a requirement that every 2 years we have to revise our content and update it. Things change more often, obviously, than every 2 years, but at a minimum, we have to do that every two years for every lesson plan we have.
And BLET?
BLET is basic law enforcement training. That's that
All
640-hour program required for everybody.
Gotcha. I'm official now. All right. So we will move on to Mr.
No problem.
Marcus. Thank you, man. And I'm sure we'll have some questions for you towards the end, but moving to Mr. Marcus Washington, who shared with us earlier. So Mr. Washington is the Director of Housing and Residence Life at Catawba College. So Mr. Washington, you throw your hand up, sir. All right. So could you share any personal experiences you have either directly lived or witnessed during a traffic stop?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I would tell you that I've been driving now for 22 years, and I have been pulled over 70 times, and that is 70. I've been pulled over 70 times, and often I have been told things such as, I'm pulling over every first, fourth, and eighth car that I see. I've been told that my car looks like a car that has been driving around and they have been looking for. I've been pulled over and told, I don't want to see you around here again. And one of the more interesting times has been when I was pulled over. Well, let me rephrase that. I was with a young lady, and a young lady was driving my car, and she was a white lady, and she got pulled over. And when she got pulled over, I was sitting in the passenger seat. And then therefore the cops started interrogating me, asking me, well, why is she driving your car? And actually we were on our way to church, and I was eating a bowl of oatmeal. So I told him, excuse me, sir, I do not want to eat my oatmeal and go to church, so that's why she's driving my car. And then he says, do you have a license? Are you insured? And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm not the one being pulled over. Elizabeth is being pulled over. Why am I being questioned? And so it has been a whirlwind of things. And just to complete my story, when I said that I was pulled over by that cop 20 years ago, the interesting fact was he knew me. The first thing he said is, hey, you're the quarterback of the football team. And I said, yes, sir. He said, yeah, I came and watched you on Friday nights. Great. And then he said, will you step out of your car? And then he frisked me. And he said, why are you out so late? And I said, it's 6 o'clock, sir. I'm just coming home from track practice. And then once he frisked me, he said, now go sit on that wall and shut up. And I said, okay. And then as I sat there, that's when more cops and more cops and more cops showed up. And then finally I did ask one of the officers, I said, excuse me, sir, why are there so many of you here? And he said, I'm just want to let you know that he said he needed backup. And so I have stories for days regarding me being pulled over. Now, with respect to all the officers that are on here, I don't dislike cops. I'm not one that will bash cops because I realize that most officers are good. However, I have had some rough situations where I've never been arrested because I'm a law-abiding citizen, but these type of things tend to happen to me.
Oh yeah, I'm here. Was that the end of the story, man?
I mean,
Oh, you just stopped. I was like, okay,
so I
you
mean,
left me on the cliff, man.
yes,
I was
that-
okay.
I mean,
I thought my mic or something
yeah,
cut
I'm
off.
sorry. I'm sorry.
All right.
No, I was just sharing that, yes, these things often happen to me. And now when I get pulled over, my wife knows to immediately start filming if I get pulled over.
Gotcha. And like I said, I got some questions, but I'm gonna stick with the scripted questions I have, and we'll save that to the end. So coming to you again, in your opinion, do you think that social media has hurt or helped relationships between law enforcement and minorities? We'll start with you, Mr. Washington, then we'll open it up to the other panelists. So in your opinion, do you think that social media has hurt or helped relationships between law enforcement and minorities?
I would say that it has hurt because people share all of their opinions on social media, and people aren't generally rational on social media. And so you will see the far extremes. People who are extremely angry will share that. People who are frightened will share that. And so when officers are looking at their social media and they see all of these memes saying, I hate cops, or cops hate Black people, things of that nature, you know, cops defund the police, all of those things, I'm sure that it makes them wary, and it makes them quite anxious when they're seeing those things, and they probably feel a bit targeted themselves. However, when you sit where I sit and you see other people talk about people that look like me that should be arrested, or they talk about those that have been murdered, saying, well, all they had to do was listen to the cops, that makes people that look like me angrier and angrier. And I certainly think that it causes more of a division than it does to help. The thing that's going to help us is having conversations like we're having today, and hopefully that can cause more of a bridge than a divide.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Thank you, Mr. Washington. Any other panelists want to add? Okay. All right. All right. We will go to some questions that have been submitted. All right. How can a young person of color feel safe when those tasked with societal safety instill fear and insecurity? And that's open to any panelist. And I repeat that. How can a young person of color feel safe when those tasked with societal safety instill fear and insecurity?
Kendrick, was that just open, or were you?
Yeah, that's open to any other panelists. So Mr. Allen or Sergeant Doherty or Sergeant Littlejohn. Yep.
So I would be interested in hearing Trooper Doherty's opinion and Trooper Littlejohn on this as well. I've been out of the game since 2008 in terms of being an active law enforcement officer. Still attached to it, obviously, in the training world and regulatory world with it. But so I'd love to hear their opinion too. But I think the essence of all of it is communication. I can say when I was with the Salisbury Police Department, at least monthly, we would hold meetings and open it up to the community. And that went by different names. It was called the Salisbury Neighborhood Action Group, and it became different things over the years. And oftentimes I can tell you the room was filled with about 4 times as many officers as it was residents of the community. And that's not to blame anybody. That was the reality of it. So a lot of it is outreach. A lot of it is taking advantage of what's there in an outreach. One of the most successful programs we ever had, I was honored to be able to be part of, was our Citizens Police Academy. Because for 11 weeks, we would bring in usually a class of 20, and we got to doing it twice a year when I was 40 people every year who came out of that program with a completely different understanding and experience than they had going into it. Because we would put them into a car, we put an officer in a police car and then let them drive one behind it and let them conduct a traffic stop and say, see it from this perspective. And they would go to the range, they would go and see different types of trainings and get exposed to every part of the criminal justice system. So once there's a communication that happens and it's transparent, and there's some education that goes along with it, you see some of those attitudes change. So I think that for me, that was always the first step with it, is actually being able to say, okay, I have this fear, or I have this understanding or opinion, maybe even an assumption about something. Let's sit down and talk about it. Let's have an experience with this. And usually that led to a better understanding on both sides, to be able to see things differently.
Thank you for sharing that. Sergeant.
Could I add something from the other side about keeping safe? I would just say, to have a plan, like when you get pulled over, you really should have a plan. I mean, I tell all young Black men, you know, when you get pulled over, that's why you put your hands on your steering wheel. When they ask for your license or registration, you ask permission to reach. And in my mind, I say that no matter how they treat me, I am always going to yes sir, no sir, because I can't win. And there's no need in arguing. There's no need in fighting or trying to be the tough guy, because at the end of the day, I want to get home to my wife and kids. And so if an officer is being rude or out of pocket with me, to keep myself safe, because that's the most important, continue to be respectful. And then if you need to call into their superiors afterwards, you know, you can do those type of things, but you can't do it if you're not around.
That's true. Before I move to the second question, Sergeant Doherty or Littlejohn, did y'all want to add, or?
I wanted to say that reality situation is that there are some people in law enforcement that should not be. That's just what it is. And there are a lot of people who are afraid of their own shadows, despite the fact that they wear this uniform, because a lot of people do hide behind the badge because it gives them this idea that that's what keeps them safe. But this uniform really means nothing when you stop a car. It's about the person that's actually wearing the uniform. So that's number one. Two, I hate that we have to make everything about race, because for me, every fight that I've had on the side of the road has not been with a Black person. So no matter what your race is, there are people who don't like law enforcement. There are people who hate what you stand for, that are in fear of you regardless. And they're going to fight you. They're going to do whatever they got to do to try to get away, because you're standing between them going to jail and going home. So it's just, unfortunately, in my opinion, this country was built on race relations. And so it's easy to say the white officer is only shooting and killing and hurting white people, and that's not always the case. But to kind of go back to the question you asked earlier about social media, when people are only going to record what perpetuates their narrative, because someone recorded me and him fighting a white female, 2 years ago? But that didn't make social media. We're two Black officers. So, I mean, you can say what you want about, oh, well, what is a person of color doing there in fear? But what about, I mean, it's not a color thing, but just for right now, that's the narrative that's just going to continue to get pushed. But to go back to what I said, there are just some officers who don't need to wear this uniform, and they are afraid. And so it doesn't matter what you look like. They're going to walk up to you with their hand on their gun, ready to pull it out, because they have their own personal problem, because they're afraid. It's sometimes nothing to do with the person behind the seat or the color of their skin. It's just strictly the officer. But then there are certain cues that people give that are indicators that you say, this ain't gonna be good.
Right.
It could go either way, honestly. You want to add anything?
You know, and I'm a true believer in community policing. I think that we have to get out in our communities and interact with people, so they can see they're real people just like they are. You know, we're human. We have feelings. We have families at home. You know, that like Trevor said, I wish that we could just put people inside our cars so they could see how this thing works sometimes. It's not always one way. So like I said, I'm a firm believer that you have to get out in your communities and talk to people, whether it be at the local diner, the corner store. The community needs to know who you are. They need to know you by your name. And I'm a true believer. Over the years, we've done a lot better with community policing, but I still think we have a long way to go. And, you know, our job is not to instill fear in anybody. That's not what we do. And unfortunately, some people feel that's what we do. We're not here to intimidate or scare anyone. You know, we're peacekeepers. And we try to be peacekeepers, put like that. And sometimes, like you said, it doesn't work out that way. But like I said, I think community policing is a big key.
Thank you for that.
I just want to add, I'm sorry, before you go to the next really quick.
Okay.
One thing for me and a lot of troopers, officers in general, when you're in the store and you see the kid acting up and the mom's like, oh, I'm gonna make him come arrest you. I'm gonna make her come arrest you. That is the absolute worst thing you can ever tell a little kid, because that stays in their mind. I have gone to wreck scenes and we keep like bears and stuffed animals because, you know, a wreck can be traumatic for a little kid. And you're coming there to simply give them a sticker or a bear, and they're like, oh, you know, and are afraid of you. And I've had kids to say, Mom, don't let her get me. And I'm like, I'm a single mom. I got an 8-year-old at home.
Right.
You know, and so that's like some of the worst things you can do. And that's a bad thing about social media, because my daughter has an iPad. She can see, you know, the videos that people post, and she knows her mom, and, you know, so she knows that I'm not like that. But if she didn't have an influence at home or someone showing her, you know, the good side of law enforcement, she's going to grow up in fear.
Right.
Because that's all that's being shown. Nobody sees when, you know, it's a hot summer day and we going in our own lunch boxes giving people water, you know, or we're spending our own money to put gas in their car or fixing water pumps and all stuff on their car and spending money out of our pocket. That's not the things that get shown. So for me, that's like the worst thing you can do. Tell a kid that we're going to do something to them, and then that's what they continue to think of us as they get older.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for all that you do with the water bottles and the stickers. I was downtown yesterday, and a little kid ran up to some officers and said, do you have a badge? I didn't know what he was talking about, but he wanted the sticker badge. So, oh yeah. So it's those interactions with the community that needs to be recorded and go viral and shared and retweeted and all that. Because even when someone does pull out the camera, it records at that moment. It doesn't record how we got to this point.
Right.
So that's what's left out. And then you're left to make up your own questions, and it could just so. Yep. Thank you for all that you all do. So here we go. A couple questions from the chat. All right. If I have a weapon, should I reveal that I have a weapon and carry concealed permit? If yes, how should I do it? And Sherelle, I hope I asked the question the way, if you have a weapon that is a concealed carry permit, y'all help me out with that.
All right. Yeah. So technically she has a concealed carry permit, I'm assuming. By law, you are required, if you have it on you, to tell the officer that I have a concealed carry weapon and that I have a permit. You're required by law to do that. So basically, if she has it inside her vehicle or on her person, when we approach that vehicle, by law, she has to let us know that and where it's located. And she has to present the concealed weapon ID card. Yeah. Now, if you don't have a concealed weapon, it has to be in plain view when we can see it. Right. So
plain view on the seat.
On the seat.
I mean, it has to be anywhere a reasonable person will walk up to your car and can just look and see it. That's plain view. But if you got it tucked between the seat, or you got your arm, or you got to reach for it, that's concealed. Plain view is anybody can just walk up and say, oh, it's a gun right there. Okay.
All right.
Okay, but it doesn't have to be plain view if you have a concealed carry permit.
Right.
Is that correct?
No. If you have a concealed carry, you can have it concealed.
Right. Okay.
But upon our approach, you have to let the officer know, I do have a concealed weapon, and you have to produce your concealed weapon ID.
But is that going to freak the officers out by the virtue of even mentioning it? I mean, you know what happened with the Castile case. You know where I'm going with this. In the middle of the day with a woman and a kid in the car.
Now, I can't speak for every officer. Now, for me, you know, it doesn't freak me out because, you know, I'm like, okay, you know, and a lot of times, you know, I can see it. And it's an officer, okay, where is it located? And I'll tell, okay, if you just mind, keep it where it's at. But no, so I can't speak for every other officer. For myself, you know, I'm always on edge because I don't know what this person could be, you know, want to do to me because I'm always behind the 8 ball. You know, you may know, but I don't. So yes, but it's really on there, concealed carry. No, I can't say that I really know. If you tell me you have it and you show me your ID, and I'm fine with that.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Okay. What would you all, panelists, what would you all say are some of the most common reasons for abuse of power by officers?
I mean, I would say that what I said earlier, there are some people who just do not need to be in law enforcement and are afraid of their own shadow. And we call it the power of the badge. They think that because you have a badge, that means something. And it means something, but not the way they intended it. You know, when you have a badge, you're held to a higher standard of exercising integrity and just being, I mean, a peacemaker, a pillar of your community. So I believe a lot of time abuse of power comes from, you know, like for us as troopers, we don't have like body cams. We don't have GPS in our cars. We don't have roll call. Literally, we can come and go as we please and nobody's going to bother you unless you know, that you answer your calls, you do what you're supposed to. So that within itself, I could say that kind of power and freedom to literally do what you want to do can go to someone's head. So I think it's just the person and then just the idea of being, I'm a law enforcement officer and you can't tell me what to do. That's not the way to be.
Right.
Can I jump in on that too?
Yeah.
Kendrick.
Go ahead, Trevor.
So expound, I think she hit the nail on the head. And I think to expound on that is that a lot of it sometimes it's an insecurity thing. It's a lack of the ability to have people skills. I mean, at its heart, this job is about interacting with the public. So if a person is lacking in their own emotional intelligence, their own interpersonal relations skills, that's just going to bleed over into the job. I mean, it's a ticking time bomb right there. I mean, I can remember going way back, and it shows my age, when all of us watched Dragnet, right? And you heard what? Just facts, ma'am. I mean, I know that's television and that's satire, what have you, but there are some folks who emulate that type of thing, much less the CSIs and that type of thing. But also I was trained, don't shake hands with people, because if you're shaking hands with people, predominantly you're shaking with your right hand, which means that's what? It's the hand you use if you needed to draw your weapon, and you're giving that up as a security thing. I mean, I look back on it and I go, why? And you know, why did I ever train somebody to do that? That's just, I don't understand that. I mean, certainly depending on the situation, you may not want to do that, but human being. So I think emotional intelligence is a big part of it. That's why we're putting that into our basic law enforcement training curriculum. We are actively looking at a partnership with the National De-Escalation Training Center to become a regional hub for that training, which incorporates emotional intelligence components into de-escalation. It trains you how to know what your emotions are, how to identify those, how to look for it in others, and then tailor your skills in de-escalating crisis situations based on that knowledge. So I think those are big reasons for it, but we should be shaking hands. We should be human beings and contributing to better communication.
Definitely. We are human beings, whether it's a suit, a uniform, whatever, we're human beings. So, all right, here we go. Would like to go to Dr. Mercedes' question, comment in the question. All right, this all sounds incredibly reasonable with regard to safety measures, but it would seem that what we are seeing in society is that those who are supposed to keep people safe are creating a sense of terror among those they pull over. For example, there have been many cases of a white officer approaching a person of color and breaching these safety protocols. How do we ensure that they adhere to the protocols and that a person of color will not feel as if they are immediately in danger upon being pulled over?
I'll start if you'd like. Just one thought on that, and this gets back to the social media thing that was brought up earlier, is that if you look at statistics nationally, force is only used in approximately 1% of all citizen interactions. Now, if you look at deadly force, it's going to be way less than that. But if we watch just social media and news headlines, you'd think there's an epidemic of police killing people all day, every day. It's just not true. And that's not to diminish or minimize any time that it does happen, because you can't. I mean, we can all look at certain incidents and say, that's just wrong. We need to say it's wrong and do better. We just have to be able to do that. But so I think first is to keep in perspective those type of statistics that are real. That can't account for somebody's fear. That's an emotion somebody feels. They're in charge of those emotions. But the idea that there's an epidemic of this happening every day, it's not the case.
Thank you for sharing. And I guess a comment to that, my dad, he's a lieutenant at Butner Federal Prison. He's been pulled over plenty of times for speeding. I've been pulled over plenty of times. Been pulled over in Durham by 2 sheriff officers. They pull me over. I roll all my windows down. If it's dark, I turn my lights on. I already have my identification. So it's, as you said, Mr. Allen, if you watch the news, you would think that as soon as they approach me, I'm not going to make it home. But they approach me. I have my ID, the windows down, answer the question. They've been disrespected a couple times, but yes, sir, no, sir, and I drive on. So that's just a story I wanted to share. It's really in my mind, when they approach me, I'm just going to give them what they asked for, and I'm going to go on about my business. I have nothing to hide, even though I do have a weapon in the vehicle with me. I already know, keep it on the seat or put it on the dashboard. But I really think it's the individual when they are approached.
Kendrick,
Yes.
if I may.
Oh, yeah.
Bob Arnold, class of 71, back behind me, my wife Susan, 71. Marcus, we're here to learn, and that you've been stopped 70 times. We've learned something. But more than that, back to the officers. I'm a furniture manufacturer, was a furniture manufacturer. I'm past my time now, but every day we strove not only to find folks who could do their job, but who could be good citizens while they did their job. You can't vet that out initially, I don't think. It's not realistic to expect that every police officer is a great human being who can do the job at the same time. It's a everyday process. And I think sometimes we're overly critical of the police force when the rest of the world isn't any better.
Sir, thank you for sharing that. I see we have one more question. If you are in a situation where you believe your health or safety are being compromised, specifically by a law enforcement officer, what, if anything, can you do in the moment to protect yourself?
I'm not sure I understand, like, what do you compromised how?
All right, if Ashton Tibbet is on and would like to give a look. Okay, I see.
You've seen multiple instances in which people are put in restraints or chokeholds or exhibiting vocally that they can't breathe or that they're suffering some type of medical condition, only to be ignored. I understand that, there can be situations in which people use that to get out of it and are making excuses, but there also are situations where that's a real valid concern for people. And again, when you are in a situation where the power balance is so skewed, what can you do? You can't. I thought that was the point of this conversation.
I think that's an officer thing. Again, going back to the story I told you all earlier, the last fight that he and I got into with the female, she wouldn't give us her hands, and he put her in a vascular restraint, and she was like, "Oh, I can't breathe." He hadn't even got it on her yet. He was just in the process of getting his arm there, and she's like, "Oh, I can't breathe," and he just made a decision that, you know what, let me just go to another option. That's an officer thing, because there are people who cry wolf, like she cried wolf. He didn't even touch her yet. But it's an officer thing. I mean, you just gotta. That's hard to answer, because I mean, there are people that cry wolf. As obviously, we gotta learn your emotions like flipping a switch. You have to know when to sir or ma'am someone. You have to know when you have to put hands on someone, and you have to be able to flip that switch back off, and they become sir or ma'am again.
Mhm.
So it's honestly just a officer thing. It's a training thing. Unfortunately, we are not medical experts. So there are some times that people are having, you know, whatever episode, and we just don't know. Because we don't know who we're stopping. We don't always know who we're dealing with. And I'm sure that's not the answer that you were looking for, but honestly, that's really hard to say what to do in that situation. To be more specific, like with George Floyd, you know if your knee is on somebody's neck, and we don't train to do that. So that's a situation where you just know you're wrong.
Mhm.
And it also goes back to, you know, I think about, you know, if you're given a lawful order, if I'm giving you a lawful order that you're under arrest to place your hands behind your back, and you choose to do something differently, okay? So it all goes back to compliance. You know, I stop you, I determine that you're impaired. I tell you, okay, sir, turn around, put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest, drive while impaired, and you turn around and look at me and tell me no.
Mhm.
Okay, now at this point, what am I to do? Okay, you're going to jail. I had to place hands on you. Now, at this point, like I say, it all goes back to compliance. And I see your point too. Yes, we've had some situations where, yes, it went too far. I get it. I understand that. But if you're given a lawful order by a law enforcement officer, and it's a lawful order, and you choose to do something differently than what I tell you to do, and we get to that situation, then what am I supposed to do? Now, if it's a situation where I feel like that you're having a true medical emergency, absolutely, it goes back to the officer. I'm going to back off. I'm going to call for a medic. I'm going to call for help to make sure this person gets the help they need, if that's truly what's happening. It's better safe than be sorry. So I hope that kind of answers your question. Like I said, it is a hard question to answer, because it also goes back to the officer, you know, how he's trained, his mental state, you know, what he's going through at the time. So I hope that somewhat kind of answers your question.
Thank you for sharing. Lawful order and compliance. So that's definitely going to be my takeaway for tonight. All right. Not sure we have any other law enforcement agencies represented, but Mr. Alex Hartzell is a deputy sheriff down in Columbia, South Carolina for the last 7 years. So just want to say thank you for joining. And if there's anyone who is serving or has served, you can definitely put that in the chat. Thank you, Sergeant Doherty, for clearing that up, because words matter. It's a vascular neck restraint, not a chokehold. So vascular neck restraint. All right, and you can read about that in the chat. Okay, don't try to BS them, and just be upfront and honest. Thank you, Mr. Washington. All right, officer discretion. Glad to see emotional intelligence training is being taught. All right. Okay. All right. How do you balance being, and this will be the last question for the evening, how do you balance being an officer and wanting to support the movement of innocent Black men and women who have been murdered?
How do I support being an officer and also supporting, you know. Uh, you know, I want to say all lives matter, not just Black lives. And me being an officer, and doing this for the amount of time that I've been doing it, I get it. I mean, I know this is what's transpired across the country at this time is a powder keg that's just has been ready to explode for a long time. And I think the George Floyd situation pretty much set this thing off. So being a Black officer and working in, you know, in the Black communities a lot, you know, being here in Charlotte, some of the communities here, it's like I said, my job is to protect not just Black people, but everyone. Okay, so I don't really see color when it comes to my job because I'm sworn to serve and protect everyone. Now I get it. I understand the Black Lives Matter movement. I understand that and what they're trying to accomplish. I get it. You know, I have a son myself. He's 31 years old, so I worry about his safety as well. But being a Black officer, sometimes I can truly say, you know, that I've been shunned upon by other Black people. You know, and to me it's amazing because I'm like, you know, I'm the same color as you, you know, and you know, and just like I'm here to protect you, I'm here to protect everybody else. So I think the movement, I appreciate what they do. I think it's much needed. I think it's that awareness is needed, has been needed for a long time. And like I said, I think now we're at a point where this thing is just pretty much, it's powder keg. And me being a Black officer, I'm going to support whatever's right for everybody, not just Black Lives Matter, but for all lives matter. So that's where I stand as far as that goes.
Thank you for sharing. Without us going to the academy, how can those on the call get an experience that the officers go through so we can have that appreciation? Because, you know, if you say all lives matter, they say, oh, what are you talking about? But if we were to do a ride along or we did a citizens academy, we would understand, oh, wow, you know, not only are they a mother, a father, they are also law enforcement. They want to go home to their family as well. So what are some classes that we can, or reading that we can do to have a better understanding or appreciation for officers?
Unfortunately for us, we don't offer that. Being the Highway Patrol, we would like to get invited to more things in the community. So thank you for having us, because most of the time we don't get this. People look at us and think we're robots. You know, they go on the road and you see a trooper, oh God, a trooper pulled out behind you, you're gonna get a ticket. Like it's bad news.
Pump the brakes, yeah.
Yeah, so that's always been our persona. So unfortunately for us, we don't have that. The ride-alongs that we do, you have to be in the process, the application process, to go to patrol school and get up to a certain point in that process before you're able to ride with us. That would be something that the local police department or sheriff department may offer, because sometimes they do have citizen panels and different things, but unfortunately we don't have that. But I would say for us, or just for anybody, just keep an open mind. Like, you know, I shouldn't have to tell you that I'm someone's mother or I'm a daughter, because that's the same respect that I'm going to give you when I see you. That's something safe to assume. So you can't assume that just because I have this uniform on, I'm a bad person, or that I forgot that I'm a Black woman outside of this uniform, because I've been stopped outside of uniform and they have no idea who I am, and they don't care who I am. And they talk to me a certain kind of way until I've shown them my ID, and they're like, oh. We still, right is right and wrong is wrong. And in and outside of this uniform, I mean, I can look at something and say that's not right. All I can do is just be the best officer, best trooper I can be, to hopefully change your mind or your perspective about us. And then you just know, like we say, one bad apple unfortunately spoils the bunch. And we all just get grouped into that. Well, anybody that wears a badge, you're a bad person. And that's not true.
Right. Well, that is an excellent segue, and we can leave that as your concluding remarks, or if there's something else you would like to offer, and we're going to give that opportunity to Sergeant Doherty and I believe Trevor, I don't know if he jumped off, but we're going to go ahead and do, okay, there you are. We'll go ahead and do closing remarks. So Sergeant Littlejohn, Sergeant Doherty, and then Mr. Allen.
To piggyback on what you said, thank you for giving us this opportunity. I wish we could do it more. Like I said, this is just it's a trying time in law enforcement. I mean, and Trevor, we appreciate you. I know you got a hard job being at the Justice Academy and all you do. We appreciate you as well. But I like I said, I truly can say, I think I'm on the tail end of this thing, so I'm about to retire. Thank God. So, and I made it. So, but these young officers, I truly say that they need to, like the training that Trevor talked about, implementing it as far as the academies and BLAT. I think is much needed. It's been needed for a long time. De-escalation training, all that. It's much needed. And like I said, thank you all for having us. And like I said, God bless.
Thank you. Thank you. Trevor Allen?
Sure. Just my connection went out a minute at the end there. So that's why I jumped off. But back in, the question that was last done, just real quick, was what can be done? On the law enforcement side, I still say us because I'll always consider myself an officer. But it's a check and balance. We have to be able to stop another officer when something's going wrong. And we're building that into our training. The duty to intervene concept is being put into our training as well. When you look at even the George Floyd incident, I mean, to sit and watch that happen for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, that's not intervening when it's necessary. And we can look at that and we say, well, they were new officers and this is a senior officer. Let's go deeper. Why was that senior officer still even working there based on the record that he had? So there are things internally that law enforcement needs to take a strong look at internally and fix. That's step one. But what else can be done is, if all else fails, make a complaint to an agency. I used to work internal affairs, so I can say every complaint that came in, I took seriously and investigated. If an agency doesn't afford a ride-along program, ask them to come present to a group. They'll be glad to, trust me. I don't know an agency out there that won't jump at the opportunity to come do a public presentation in an educational type role and an outreach. So those are things that can be done. I once again appreciate the opportunity to come and spend some time with everyone here. Happy to do it any time in the future again. I think this type of thing is what needs to happen more often.
Oh, definitely.
So thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Oh, yeah. Well, there were some questions we were unfortunately unable to get to. So C-band, we might be able to do a part 2 of this. All right. So if you would like a recording of this, please add your email to the chat box. So I see that coming in. So thank you for that. So thank you, Catawba Cop. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Catawba College. Thank you, President Nelson. Happy homecoming. Don't forget C-band, Catawba Black Alumni Network. You can find more information on catawba.edu. Get yourself a pen, chapstick, bumper sticker, lapel pin, scarf. Look into our 1966 society. Thank you, everyone that joined. Ms. Lashika Walker, thank you. Any closing comments?
Hey, we're hiring. If anybody wants to be a law enforcement, we're
So
hiring.
I can legally speed. I might have to look into that.
I think everybody looks good in gray.
The only thing I want to say is we commend you all, law enforcement officers, for answering the call every single day and putting your life on the line to keep us safe. Thank you again. I really appreciate taking the time out of your busy schedules. If you would like a recording of this forum, please enter your email address in the chat box. And if you're interested in learning about more forums and panels that we have like this, please indicate that as well. We'd be more than happy to send you the schedule of things that we are doing and we're planning to do. Again, like Kendrick said, if you would like to learn a little bit more about the Catawba Black Alumni Network, please visit our website. We have some great things in the works, and we have done some great work to make sure that we are having more conversations like this. And it's just so much unrest that's going on, not in the world, and in our communities. And so we just want to make sure that we give it the attention that it needs. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. All right. I didn't know if President Nelson. Oh, all right. Thank y'all.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, he had to
Thank
jump off, so
Okay. All right. Have a good evening, everyone.
thank you.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Hey, Trevor.
Bye, alumni.
Hey, good seeing you, man.
Happy homecoming.